You know I read a lot of books this month, but I didn't quite realise how many until now. You can't even see the bottom of the stack. Oops. I mean, that was gonna happen, wasn't it? Hey guys! So welcome back to another video. Today I'm doing my March reading wrap up. Also, I'm like not wearing any makeup because I really was not in the mood to put any on. So I'm feeling a bit like insecure, so just ignore that. So I read a lot of books this month. And usually when I would say a lot, I would mean like 15. No, I read 28 books this month. But don't ever expect me to read this much books in a month again because it's not gonna happen. I usually read about 10 books a month. Anyway, I'm gonna start off with series. My descriptions are not the best a lot of the time, so just look them up on like Goodreads if you really want a better description. Let's just get started because we have a lot of books to talk about and this is going to be a long video. First like series I read the last 2 books in the Legend trilogy. So we have Prodigy and we have Champion, both by Marie Lu. I gave this one a 2 stars and this one a 3 stars. I read Legend last month and I also gave that one a 3 stars. Basically we have our 2 main characters, Day and June. So June is from like the rich sector and Day is from the poor sector. They are like dystopians. Also in this world there's like this plague. There's something a bit weird going on with the plague. There's this like test you have to do when you reach like a certain age and you get like assigned a job based on the score of your test. However, if you don't get like a certain score, you kind of just disappear. And Day does not like pass the test. He manages to like escape and he's now like living as a rebel. And basically his brother gets the plague, but because they're poor they can't really afford the vaccines, so he basically tries to like steal a vaccine for his brother. However, during this he allegedly kills June's brother, so June kind of wants to get revenge, so she kind of goes undercover to find Day, and then it kind of goes on from there. And then there's obviously like a romance. I have very mixed feelings about this series. I just think at this point I've read so many dystopian. I just feel like this was just not original in my opinion. Maybe if I'd like read it close to the time it came out, it would have been more original, but just at this point I just felt like it really wasn't. With that, I just don't like the romance in it, in my opinion. I just think it was way too like fast. So I gave this one a 2 stars. By the end of this book I ended up hating both our main characters and the romance. They did a really weird thing with the romance where they were like, oh, we need some drama, so let's like throw in some other love interests. I just thought it was unnecessary. And then I gave this one 3 stars. I preferred it more, but to be honest I have no memory of what happened in these books. They kind of feel like fever dreams, so yeah. Anyway, that is these. Next I read probably the biggest surprise of this month. I read the entirety of the Lunar Chronicles. These was so much better than I was expecting. I had really low expectations going into these because like I said, I don't typically like dystopians much, and these are like robot cyborgs in them, and I didn't think I liked that, but I ended up loving these. This is one of my new favorite series. How do I explain this series? On Earth there is currently this plague going around called leishmaniasis, which if you get it you die, right? However, it's also like a dystopian world and we have like cyborgs and robots and stuff. Cyborgs are basically like humans, and then maybe if you like lose an arm or something you can get like a robot arm, and that's what makes you like a cyborg. They are considered like less than humans. And to try and find like the cure for the leishmaniasis, there's this like cyborg draft going on where the cyborgs are basically like selected to be tested on to find the cure, and they rarely like survive the testing. And our main character Cinder is a cyborg. There's also this like race of humans who live on the moon called Lunars, and they're like evil. They can like control humans and they can have like glamours and stuff, and they are basically ruled by this dictator called Lavana, who's like the villain of the story. So all of the individual books are like different fairy tale retellings, also all have like an overarching plot that goes on. So in Cinder, which is obviously a Cinderella retelling, we have our main character Cinder. She is a cyborg. She like lives with her stepmom. Obviously they don't treat her the best. One day one of her stepsisters gets leishmaniasis. So her stepmother offers Cinder up for the cyborg draft to be tested on. And then she also meets this Prince Kai, who's like the Emperor's son. They strike up a little bit of a relationship. I gave this one a 4.5 stars. I had a great time with it. The only reason it wasn't a 5 stars is because it was incredibly predictable, I'm not gonna lie to you. I loved the characters, I loved the romance, I just thought it was so good. I did listen to half of this on audiobook though, and then I read the other half physically. And then we have Scarlett, which is the second book and is a Red Riding Hood retelling. I again listened to half of this on audio and half of it physically. I gave this one a 4.25 stars because we had like two completely different storylines going on. We had Scarlett and Wolf, who is like the Red Riding Hood retelling, and then we also had like following like the events of Cinder. So we had like two separate storylines going on, and it was a bit like disjointed, I felt, for the first half. But then at the second half they kind of connected a bit more, and I ended up enjoying it a lot more. In this, our main character Scarlett's grandma has been like kidnapped, so she enlists the help of this guy called Wolf to find her. I read Cress, which was my favourite in the series. I gave this a 5 stars. I kid you not, this is a 500-page book and I sit down and I read this in one sitting. I ate this up. I feel like at this point, if I start to get into like synopses, it will be a bit of a spoiler. It was so good. The relationships, the characters, the plot. I just love this. Then I actually listened to the audiobook for Fairest, which is the prequel novella. It's like 200 pages. It's like the villain Lavana's backstory. I give this one a 3 stars. I felt it was a bit unnecessary and I really did not care for it, but the writing was really beautiful in it, so yeah. Then I read Winter, which is the last one. Now this is an absolute brick of a book. It's like 800 pages. Unfortunately, of all the main books, this was my least favourite. I gave this one a 4 stars, but it probably deserves a bit less because I was just very annoyed by this. I thought it was a bit of a disappointing ending. I just felt like the first 700 of the 800 pages were so repetitive. They were basically just our characters getting captured by the villains, and then the other character is going to rescue the character who got captured, and then either someone else getting captured, someone getting left behind, or them getting split up, and then them having to like do it all over again or like find each other. I did still give it a 4 stars because at this point I'm attached to the characters, I'm attached to the world, I love the relationships. It was fun, I liked the ending. It could have been shorter. Like, I felt like it was just long for the sake of being long. And then I did also listen to the audiobook to Stars Above, which is a novella collection. I was expecting this to be more sequel novellas, but they're actually more like prequel novellas of each of the individual characters, and then I think there's one sequel novella, and there's like 10 novellas in this collection. I gave this one a 3 stars because it just felt like it was giving us a lot of information we already knew but in more detail, and I was like, I don't really need this, like it's already been explained to me. However, I did really enjoy the like one sequel novella we had. Next, this isn't really a series, I'm gonna put them together, and that is several books from the Osemanverse. So I'm currently trying to make my way through them. None of these books are actually mine, these are all my sister's. All the Alice Oseman books I read this month, I either listened to audibly or I read them in ebook format. I did read I Was Born for this. I listened to this on audiobook. How do I explain this book? It's basically, we have two POVs. We have Angel and we have Jimmy. And Jimmy, he's basically part of this like super famous boy band called the Ark. And they're like your classic like One Direction-esque boy band. And Angel is like a massive fan of this band. Like she's a huge super fan, and basically through like circumstances they kind of end up meeting, and then like stuff happens from there. I went into this book expecting it to be like a boy band fan, like YN romance, like a Harry Styles fanfiction, which it was not. There's no romance in this book, which I really appreciated, and it made me enjoy it a lot more than I was expecting to. I give this a 4.25 stars. I went through my boy band fangirl fanfiction era. I could definitely relate to a lot of the things Angel did. However, I also felt like some of the things she did I felt a bit like weird about. I really liked our main characters. I thought they were great and I thought the representation was good, and I know Alice Oseman did, as she does for all of her books, did a lot of research into the representation, but also had great mental health representation. It had really good anxiety representation as someone who has anxiety. Lovely to see. And I just thought it was really good. I ended up really liking it. I just didn't quite connect to our main characters as much as I would have liked to do. And I thought some things were a bit like cringy. But I feel like if you're gonna have a book with like a boy band fangirl type thing in, it's always gonna be cringy. I also read Heartstopper Volume 4. I typically don't read graphic novels, so I have a really hard time rating them. However, this one I gave 4.5 stars. It was definitely my favourite out of all the graphic novels in the Heartstopper series. Like, it was just that bit more like deeper, I guess. I don't really know. If you don't know what the Heartstopper graphic novels are about, they're basically kind of like a love story between these two teenage boys who kind of meet and they become friends, and then maybe but something more happens. And it also talks about like mental health and eating disorders and like coming to terms with your sexuality and stuff like that, and I just think that they're great. I also read This Winter. It's like a super short 100-page novella. It has like some illustrations in which are really cool. I did read this in March and it's like a Christmas novella, so it felt kind of weird. It basically just follows Christmas time in the Spring household, and this like, which is basically like Charlie, who's the main character in this, Tori, who's the main character in this book, and then like their little brother. It focuses also a lot on the effects of having an eating disorder at Christmas. Do search up trigger warnings for all Alice Oseman books. I give this a 4 stars. I thought it was fun, but it's really short, so like, what am I supposed to really say about it? And then we have Solitaire. Fortunately, I gave this one a 2.75 stars. So this basically follows Tori, who is Charlie's older sister. Then this like game, is it a game? This like thing called Solitaire kind of comes up. I don't really know. I will say I did relate to Tori at moments, but I also found her the most insufferable main character. I loved Tori in the Heartstopper graphic novels and in This Winter as well, where we get her POV. I just thought she had the biggest case of like not like the other girls syndrome. I just found her a bit annoying, and I thought the like whole Solitaire game thing was a bit weird, but it's whatever. The last like series I read was, I finally started The Mortal Instruments by Cassandra Clare. I finally did it. I started reading the Shadowhunters world. How do I explain like Shadowhunters to people who've never like read them before? In this world there are like demons, and Shadowhunters are like these humans who have like a bit of angel blood in them, so they're like, I guess like advanced humans, and they use like runes, which are these like you see like the tattoos on this guy, those are runes, and they basically like amplify certain things. There's like healing runes, there's like I don't even know, there's like all sorts of runes, and they basically like kill the demons and like protect the humans. There's also people who are half demon and like half something else. So there's like warlocks, which are half demon, half human. And then there's like vampires and werewolves, which have like a demon disease. They're all called like downworlders, and Shadowhunters aren't supposed to kill them. They kind of have like a truce with them, but they kind of like don't really like get along. And our main character Clary basically stumbles across like a demon attack, which kind of becomes like a part of the Shadowhunters world. So I read the first 3 books of this series, because the way I'm going to read the Shadowhunters books is the first 3 books in the Mortal Instruments, then the Infernal Devices, and then I'll probably go back to the Mortal Instruments. In terms of rating, I gave this one a 3.5 stars. It was a fun introduction. I will say I have watched the show like twice before I've read the books. I did know certain things, and obviously I know like about that one plotline, the one romance plotline. You guys know the illegal romance plotline. Anyway, it was fun, but that romance plotline at the end was just a bit unnecessary. Also, all these books are mainly from Clary Jason Simon's POV, and sorry, they are my 3 least favourite characters in this series. I hate them. Clary is annoying. Simon is, he's funny at he has his moments, but for the most time he's annoying. And Jace, I'm just like, you're really not that special. My favourite characters will always be Alec, Izzy and Magnus, and I think we get one Alec POV in City of Ashes, the second book. We get none in this one, And then we maybe get like 5 Alec POVs and then like 1 Izzy POV in the 3rd book. Bearing in mind, there are like multiple POV changes every chapter. This got a 2.25 because this was essentially all just that one illegal romance plotline, and the 0.25 stars was purely for that one Alec POV scene we got, which lasted about a page and a half. And then this one got a 3 stars. At least the illegal plotline was made not illegal. But why? Why did we have to go through like 2 books to get to it not being illegal? And also you can tell this was definitely meant to be a trilogy. I did read one series on Kindle Unlimited though. I'll just talk about that series now before I move on to like other physical books. Row and Blood series. So we have Prince of the Sorrows and then we have Lord of Silver Ashes. It is a queer fantasy romance. I ended up really enjoying it. To be honest, I feel like I could not provide a good description of the blurb. So it's like your classic fae book where like the humans are treated as like lesser, and our main character Saffron, he is a human and he's kind of at threat to being sent back to the human world if he does not get this like academic endorsement. However, he doesn't want to go back to the human world. Also, like humans, they're like not taught how to like write and read because they're treated as like lesser. They don't go to like school or anything, and they're basically like slaves and servants for the fae. However, our main character, Saffron, he's kind of like taught himself how to read and write a bit. He kind of meets this like fae prince one day when he's like in the woods. Saffron basically ended up like somehow tricking the fae prince, so he's kind of like annoyed at him. And it turns out that like high fae person he tricked is actually like the prince, and he's called Sylvan. And he's like our love interest. This is very much like a bully romance. And also when Saffron was tricking Sylvan, he somehow became across Sylvan's true name, and in this world, if you know like fairies' true names, you can basically like get them to do anything for you, which is like how he tricked him. And obviously Sylvan does not want anyone to know his true name. He wants Saffron dead. He wants to kill him, but Saffron doesn't want to die, so he's like, well, if you allow me access to the library, because like humans aren't allowed to go to the library, I will find a way for me to remove like your true name from my mind. They kind of like work together to find how to do this, but there's also like this, at the same time while they do this and they're kind of getting closer and stuff, there's this like wolf that's going around and killing like the humans. So Saffron kind of starts to try and figure out what happened, like what the wolf is doing, who the wolf is, how to stop it, that sort of stuff. That was a really weird description, but I ended up really enjoying this. I gave the first one a 4.75 stars. It took me like a while to get into it, but once I was into it and I was eating it up. It was like angsty, the romance, it was just so good. The plot, I loved it. And the fact it's on Kindle Unlimited as well. I am very tempted to buy the paperbacks of these. And then I read the second one. I originally thought this was going to be a duology, but it turns out there's going to be like at least one more book. So I read Lord of the Silver Ashes. I gave this one a 4 stars. I didn't quite enjoy it as much as the first one. It was good, I just felt it was a bit long. And I just didn't quite love it as much as the first one. I feel like because I love like the build up to the romance, and then once the romance is kind of like burnt, I'm a bit bored in my opinion. Anyway, those are like the series I read this month. Now moving on to like standalones or like books where I only read one book in the series. I did read Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. I have the stunning Illumicrate edition. This is obviously the sequel to Ninth House. In Ninth House, we follow Alex Stern, who can see greys, which are ghosts. Now, please search for warnings for these books. They're incredibly dark. And Alex, basically, she kind of went through like a traumatic event. After the traumatic event, the like Yale secret societies gave her like a full ride to join this secret society called Leafy. I still don't know how you say it. Leaf, they govern all the secret societies because they deal with like supernatural stuff, and Leaf basically makes sure they don't do anything that's like too dangerous. This girl also like in the town of, where's Yale? New Haven? Is that where Yale is? A girl has been murdered and she's also like trying to investigate that. This is the sequel. I give this a 4.75 stars. I had a phenomenal time with this. I thought it was great. I just love Alex so much as a main character. and she's been through so much, and I just love her, and Darlington and Dawes. Oh, I just love every single character in this book. However, it wasn't a 5 stars because there was like the introduction of vampires in this book, which I don't know, I just feel like it felt a bit off. Like, I associate vampires with like, you know, like Twilight and like, you know, like Vampire Diaries, not with like this really dark adult fantasy. It just felt weird, and I felt she could have added some other sort of supernatural creature other than a vampire. But other than that, I had a great time with it. No complaints from me. Staying in the realm of sort of dark academia, I also read A Lesson in Vengeance by Victoria Leigh this month. So in this book, we have our main character Felicity, and basically this is Sapphic, and like a year ago at her school, her girlfriend died. However, she died under sort of suspicious circumstances. So Felicity is back, she's repeating her senior year, and she sort of becomes friends with this person called Ellis. There's also like witchcraft. That was a really vague description. I give this a 3.25 stars. Like, the first half of this book, I thought this was being set in like a university setting, but it's not. They're in high school still. They are 18, and they were not acting like 18-year-olds. I thought they were very much acting like they were in their 20s. I don't know why I was so shocked. This is young adults, so it makes sense they are young adults. It felt weird. I just thought this book was very predictable. I so badly wanted to like it. I am still on the hunt for a good Sapphic dark academia, so please do tell me if you know any. Like, I felt like this had so much potential. It just did not deliver for me. Just quickly do this book so I can get it out the way. I did a reread of... I got a 4.25 stars, but I'm not going to talk about it. I obviously don't support the author. This, obviously, as you can tell, this is like my mum's copy from like 20 years ago. This book is probably older than me. In fact, it definitely is older than me. I've decided over the next few months I'm going to be rereading one of these every month. But I don't want to talk about it because I hate the author. We have The Luminaries by Susan Dennard. This is the Illumicrate edition. I give this a 4 stars. In this book, we have this like town called Hemlock Falls, and in Hemlock Falls there's basically this group of people called the Luminaries who protect the world from these demons that live in the forest surrounding the village. It's kind of basically Shadowhunters. Our main character Winnie, her dad basically like betrayed the Luminaries or something, so her family's been like ostracized. However, it's like her 16th birthday or something, and she wants to become part of the Luminaries, so she like takes the trials, and it just goes on from there, and she like enlists the help of her ex-childhood best friend. It was fun. It just felt incomplete. It's a 300-page book, and it felt like it should have had another 200 pages on it. I liked the main character. She's a bit generic, but I liked her. And I liked the romance, but like it did not feel complete in my opinion, so we have that. And I had a similar situation with this book, Godkiller by Hannah Kaner. I again have the Illuminate edition. I did give this one 3 stars. I wanted to like this so badly, but I just did not. This is like an adult fantasy, and our main character Kissin, she's like a god killer. Basically, when she was younger, her whole family was murdered by, I think, like the fire god or something. So she's a god killer, and then she like stumbles across this girl called, I think it's Anara. She's like 10 or something. I don't know how old she is. And she's basically like bound herself to this god, and she kind of enlists Kissin's help to kind of like free her from the god she has bound herself with. So they sort of go on this journey, and then they also, on their journey, they meet this other main character called Elo. Pronunciation probably not correct. Elo, he basically used to be this knight for the king. However, he disagreed with some of the things the king did. He left. He's not a knight anymore. However, the king kind of comes back to him, and he asks him to do like one last thing for him to save his life. It just felt like nothing really happened until like the last 100 pages. And also, I hated the romance in this book with like a burning passion. Like, I went into this book expecting either no romance or a queer romance, and while we do have a good amount of queer characters, I did not like the romance. I thought they should have been platonic besties, in my opinion, and it was not for me. I will be continuing on this series because again it was so short. It was like 300 pages and I felt like it did not feel complete. Next I read The Invisible Life of Addie Larue by V. Schwab. I have the anniversary edition. She's gorgeous. If you don't know what Addie Larue is about, we have our main character Addie and she basically makes a deal with like the devil to live forever. However, everyone she meets will like forget her as soon as she like leaves their sight or like by like the next morning. And then we also have another main character who we meet called Henry. That's basically the story. I was so scared going into this because I've heard it's a very character based, not much plot, more so vibes type book. I didn't think that was really my thing. However, I love this. I did give this a 5 stars. I am just giving into the Addie Larue hype. V. Schwab really wrote down all my innermost thoughts and fears and she just put them on paper. Not only did I relate to Addie, I also related to Henry and I just had a great time. This edition is just gorgeous, like the illustrations. Be for real right now. Oh my god, it's just a stunning edition. The way this book made me feel, people were not kidding when they said how much of a good book it was. 5 stars, phenomenal, great book. I then read Spin the Dawn by Elizabeth Lim. This is the 1st book in a duology. I give this a 3.5 stars. In this book, we are basically following the events, like a civil war has just taken place. Our main character, out of her 3 brothers, all of them fought in the war and 2 of them have died and 1 of them came back and he like can't walk anymore. And her mother's also dead and her dad's like, he's just not been the same since her mother's death. He's like grieving and she's kind of like holding together the family business of being a tailor. And basically the like emperor's, he has this like grand master tailor or whatever, and his like tailor has like died under slightly mysterious circumstances. So he's hosting a competition to find who's gonna be like the next like palace royal tailor. Our main character Maya's family gets invited. However, women cannot like enter the competition. Women cannot be like the royal tailor. However, like she's the one who runs the business and she wants to enter the competition because she doesn't have a lot of money and she needs the money for her family. So she disguises as her brother and enters the competition. I will say this is a 400-page book. The competition only lasted like the first 150 pages. So it like ended like there. So this was all a completely different plotline that was not the competition, and I firmly believe this should have been 2 books with the competition spanning 1 and then the events of like the second part of the book being a separate book, and there should have been a trilogy instead of duology because I thought the pacing was so weird. It felt weirdly fast and it just felt really disjointed to me. And also our main character, I thought she was very bland. She was really not giving anything. And I did not like the romance. It was a typical situation of an immortal falling in love with like a girl in her late teens, maybe early 20s, I'm not quite sure her age. And I'm over it. I am over it. Now getting on to like the audio and ebooks. So I read The Lost Sisters by Holly Black in ebook format. This is a super short 50-page novella, which is basically Taryn's point of view for the Cruel Prince series. I give this a 3.5 stars. It's a really cool writing style. It's written in like a letter to Jude, but it's Taryn. I don't care. I didn't need it. I did not need Taryn's perspective on certain things. But the writing was very beautiful, so 3.5 stars from me. Then I read the ebook for Hani and Ishus Guide to Fake Dating by Adiba Jaigirdar. I hope I'm saying that right. I'm so sorry if I'm not. I give this a 3 stars. First of all, representation, great. And I so badly wanted to love this book. But it was just way too fast burn for me to actually like the romance. I think the whole book took place over like maybe 1 or 2 weeks. If you're gonna do fake dating, it needs to be a slow burn for me. You need to like slowly realize you're feeling. Over the course of like 2 weeks, no. Other than that, I really enjoyed it. Then I read the ebook of Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. First of all, do not like Colleen Hoover. So you might be like, why did you read a Colleen Hoover book if you hate Colleen Hoover so much? And the answer to that is because people are always like, how can you hate Colleen Hoover if you've not read her best book? Which is apparently Reminders of Him. So I wanted to read it, and I'm gonna tell you right now, I still hate Colleen Hoover. I still dislike her. I mean, not only is she problematic as a person, but her books are also incredibly problematic in themselves. What reminds us of him follows Kenna, who's just gotten out of jail for murder, or prison for murder. I know there's like a difference between them. I don't know what the difference is. When she was like put into prison, she's pregnant, so she's kind of trying to reconnect with her daughter. She basically like killed her daughter's dad. But Ledger was like her ex's, the guy she killed's best friend, and he's kind of like helping to raise her daughter, and then they kind of like form a connection and stuff. I just thought the romance so unnecessary and so inappropriate. Like, you just got out of prison and you're trying to get back in your daughter's life. Why are we focusing on the romance? What? It just felt like they were Colleen Hoover was using these very serious real life issues as a plot point for the romance, which we all know she's done it before. We all know she likes to use these very serious real life issues for shock factor and for plot points. But can we stop it, please? I did give this a 3 stars because I enjoyed some parts of it, but just it should not have been a romance. I will down the hill that Colleen Hoover is for girls who never went through a Wattpad phase, and as someone who went through a Wattpad phase, I don't care. The last book I read this month was Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. I gave it a 3.5 stars. I listened to like half of it on audio and read half of it in ebook. We have Camino and Yahaira. Camino, she lives in the Dominican Republic, and her dad, he works away a lot and he basically comes back like once a year. We also have Yahaira. She lives in New York. Her parents are both immigrants from the Dominican Republic, and her dad goes away for work once a year for a couple months to the Dominican Republic. Turns out, plot twist, they have the same dad. That's not a spoiler, that's literally the premise of the book. They have the same dad, and he is basically, while he is flying from New York to the DR, he gets into a plane crash. It is inspired by a real life plane crash. I can't remember the name of it. So obviously the plane crashes and they have no prior knowledge of each other. They discover their dad's kind of not who they thought he was. He has 2 families. It goes on from there. It deals a lot with like grief. There's a lot of like such trigger warnings for this book. Also, this book is written in prose, which is very interesting. I've never read a book written in prose. I wouldn't say it's like my favorite writing style, but it was a fun experience to listen and read. Obviously, both these girls, they're living very different lives, but they are very much opposites of each other. Like, you have Camino, she really wants to go to like America, she wants to become a doctor, and then you have like Yahaira, and she doesn't really know what she wants to do. She's kind of like average at school and stuff. I just felt like the first like 200 pages until like the 2 characters like actually met up, I just felt a bit like meh about it. And then like the last like 100 pages or so, when the characters were together and interacting, that's when I became a lot more attached and ended up liking it a lot more. I had a fun time overall, and I would really recommend this. If I missed one, I'm really sorry, but those were all the 28 books I read within the month of March. I will quickly talk you guys through the books I'm in the middle of. Well, I was in the middle of at the end of the month. It's not like a week into April. I'm filming this very late. So I am halfway through the audiobook for I'm Glad Your Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. I have finished it since then, but I'll talk about it more in my April wrap up. I'm also about halfway through A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J Maas. I'm filming a reading vlog for that, so be on the lookout. I'm also about 20% of the way through Dance with the Fairy Prince by Lisa Cover. However, a book I do want to talk about that I have finished, and I want to talk about it in this video because I was almost done at the end of the month, so I will also include it in my April wrap up, but I want to like properly talk about my thoughts in this one. Song of Silver Flame Like Night by Amelie Wen Zhao. I loved this book, and in this book it basically takes place about 12 years after the kingdom it is set in has been colonized. So it is set in this place called the Last Kingdom, and they've been colonized by these group of people called the Atlanteans. It's also inspired by Chinese mythology, I believe. So we have a main character, Lang, and her mother was basically killed by the colonizers, and she's now working at this tea house. They can buy the girls who work at the tea house for one night. However, if they buy them for one night, they're basically like kicked out because they're deemed like used goods. So basically Lan, our main character, she ends up getting bought for one night. So she's obviously really scared. She's like, what's gonna happen to me? I don't really want to do this. And she kind of ends up, I don't want to say getting saved, because she ends up like saving herself, but she kind of ends up like running away, and then with our other main character called Zen. When Lan's mother died, she ended up like putting this weird mark on her, but no one can see it other than her. However, Zen can see this mark, and Lan basically discovers she kind of has like magic in her, and she basically thought the magicians were like wiped out, but they weren't. They were just like kind of practicing in secret. The way the Atlanteans basically managed to colonize this whole country was because they have their own magic system which involves metals. I think it's Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson also has a magic system which involves metals. This book, it didn't have a magic system that involved metals, because the Hin is like the name of the people who live in the Last Kingdom. The Hins have like their own unique magic system, which is, I would explain it, but it's very complicated. It uses like yin and yang, that type of magic. It's like hard to like explain, I feel like. Lan and Zen, they're basically like escaping from the Atlanteans because they want to wipe out the people who have magic, because they're obviously like a threat. They don't want them to like take back their colonized land. And then it kind of goes on from there. They go on a little like adventure type thing to discover Lan's powers. Like there's this like magic school. It's so good. And it also, the way it talks about the serious effects of colonization while also having a great fantasy magic system and a great fantasy world and incredible characters. It's so detailed, and they are so deep, the characters. And not only are the two main characters, all the side characters, they're also just so incredibly well thought out, and the relationships. And we do have some morally grey main characters in this, which is lovely to see. And the ending, the plot twists at the end, I was shocked. And the way it talks about the effects of colonization, basically the Atlanteans, they basically erased all Hin identity as colonizers do. They've erased their names, they've erased their language. Also, obviously, I myself am a white British person, so I feel like it is even more important for people like me to read books like these, because unfortunately in the past it was people like me who oppressed and did these things and silenced voices like these. And while we do learn about colonization and the effects of it to some extent in history in school, we don't learn about it nowhere near the extent we should. And often a lot of the ways we do learn about it, we learn about it from the perspective of the colonizers, not from the perspective of the colonized. And I just think books like these are just so important to read. Also, please, if I ever like articulate or say anything that like wrong, or that maybe I guess like problematic, do call me out on it, because I don't know everything, and I may say some things wrong, and I would much rather you call me out and correct me on it than just let me continue to say things that are like incorrect. Anyway, that's that for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't ever expect a wrap up to be this long again, because it definitely won't be. I will never probably read this amount of books in a month again. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you had a good time, and I guess I'll see you guys next time. Bye.